Block the motor. Today's daf is daf Chav Zayin. Just one quick thing. Yesterday we learned about that, if Yom Tov falls on a Friday or if Yom Tov falls on Motzei Shabbos. So we say that on Motzei Shabbos you make Havdalah, but you don't blow the shofar because Shabbos anyway you couldn't do any work. But it seems that the time Mishnah is talking about if Yom Tov falls on a Friday or if Yom Tov falls on a Sunday. That's how it seems about Gershom and many Rishonim. But Rashi seems to be learning clearly that the first part of the Mishnah is talking about a normal Shabbos on a Friday or a normal Erev Yom Tov. Rashi holds even Erev Yom Tov, they used to blow the shofars to tell the people, to refrain from working. And Motzei Shabbos, they would make Havdalah and they would not blow shofar. They wouldn't blow shofar is because nobody worked on Shabbos anyway, the way Rashi seems to be learning. In other words, according to the Rashba, the Ran, and the way Rashi seems to be learning, on a normal Motzei Shabbos, all they did was Havdalah, they did not blow shofar. The Rambam clearly learns differently, and I don't know why nobody brought it down here, but the Rambam clearly learns that on a normal Motzei Shabbos, they definitely blew shofar to tell them that now they can go ahead and do other malachas. If Yom Tov falls on Sunday, they would not blow shofar Motzei Shabbos, based on the Gemara Shabbos that says it's a shvus. You shouldn't be blowing shofar really on Yom Tov if there's no need to. This year Rosh Hashanah falls on a Shabbos, we're not going to blow shofar. So therefore, because it's a shvus, we don't want you to blow shofar. But otherwise, on a normal Motzei Shabbos, you should definitely blow shofar to tell the people that, you know what, you can start doing your malachas now. So not so much about the past, like a normal Friday, we blow shofar to stop working. On Motzei Shabbos, you blow shofar to tell them that now you can start working and do all kinds of malachas. So it's an interesting machlekes on how to learn pshat in the first part of the Mishnah. We're talking about only if Yom Tov falls on a Friday, we're talking about an ordinary Friday and an ordinary Sunday. Okay, we're starting today the new Perek HaShechet, the second Perek, and we go back to the laws of Shechita. And the Gemara today will want to know, where do we know that generally speaking you have to shecht it all? Where do you know and what Shechita is? From the neck, how do you know what Shechita is? So we're going to have different sources, and more or less the conclusion will always be the same. Says the Mishnah. But it comes to, we learned before already, there's a bird and an animal. By an animal, there are two sides, the trachea and the esophagus. You have to cut through both, or at least through the roiv of both. By a bird, you have to cut through only one of the simanim. That's enough to kill the bird, or at least the roiv of one of the simanim. So it says the Mishnah, if somebody shecht, echad ba'oif, one of the simanim by a bird, or shnayim bebehemo, two by an animal, shchitosik sheda, it's kosher. The Gemara is going to wonder, hasheich, it sounds like if he did it, it's all right. What do you mean if he did it, it's all right? That is the way to do it. What else is he supposed to do? We just said you have to go through one sign for a bird and two by an animal. Even roiv of the signs is good enough. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, by a bird you have to go more. Ad sheyishcha, you actually have to shecht. Es havaridin, you have to check through also all the viridin, all the arteries and veins around the neck, according to Rashi. Different opinions where the viridin are, but that's what Rashi says, around the neck. They collect the blood. What happens if he only did chatzi echad? You did one simon and you only did half of it, or you need two simon by behema. You did echad one whole, but a chatzi half, not a roi, but a half. The din is shchita sepsul. The shchita is possible. Roiv, why? Because roiv echad by need a majority of one by a bird, and the roiv shnayim behema, majority of two by behema. Shchita shadens kasha. Why does the Mishnah reiterate this last clause? The Gemara will talk about it later. Says the Gemara, hasheichet the evidence. It sounds like only if he did it. Shnayim behema lechatchila loy, but lechatchila that's not how to do it. Ad kamalish chayit v'leizel. What else do you want us to do? Isn't that the din of shchita to go through two simonim? What do you mean hasheichet? If you did it, it's all right. One answer is that echad ba'oiv. When it says hasheichet is by a bird, really you should do two simonim. But if you did one, it's all right. Another answer, no. One is the chatchila also by birds, not only b'diavad. Even the chatchila, all you need to do is go through one simon by a bird. So what's the hasheichet b'diavad? Aruba shalachimay. But if you went through the rave of one of them or the rave of two of them, it's only b'diavad. The chatchila, we want you to go through both simonim. So now the Gemara is going to have a discussion. We'll bring a number of sources of how do you know that you need shchita. How do you know you need to shecht? How do you know you need to shecht? From and where do you shecht? From the neck. Shenemar, it says a posik, b'shochat es ben habokor, you should shecht, this talking about the kochim, kabbanis, You should check the cattle, and the word is v'shachat. So we're going to break up the word v'shachat and make it read as if it's from two words. We're going to darshan mimokim sheshach, the part that bends down, chiteu, clean it out from its blood. Or according to Rashi has another pshat, chiteu means prepare it for eating. How do you know that chiteu means to clean up? Because it says it says by mitzvah you should clean up the house. For another passage, you cleanse me with the hyssop there, and I'll be clean. We're up to about 15 lines on top of the page. We're trying to work out the Chav Zayin, Ahmed Aleph. We're trying to work out how do you know you shech from the neck. So we know you 27a. You know you shech from the neck because it says v'shachat, the part that bends down. Says maybe from the tail. The tail also is always hanging down. Says the Gemara shach. It says here that when it bends down, normally it stands up, but sometimes it bends down. The tail is always hanging down. This is constantly hanging down, so it's not the tail. Maybe it's the ear. The whole idea of shchita is, it says that, by kachim, it's dam hanefesh. You need the dam nefesh to sprinkle on the mizbeach, and the ear, the dam hanefesh does not come out through the ear. But lema, the cord of azal dam, maybe start from there and work your way down to the neck. Number one. Furthermore, shehiyah, dorsa, chaloda, agroma, v'ikar, all the psulim, minon, how do you know that? El Gemara, it's halacha l'Moshe Sinai. So therefore, shchita minatzavar nami Gemara, that shchita also is halacha l'Moshe Sinai. The Korah Mayasa, what the possible shach come to the lelishavia gisra. Don't cut it all the way. Don't cut it all the way through and break through the back and everything else. Just go through the simon. Okay, we're at the Chav Zayin now. We're learning about shchita, and the Gemara's discussion here is how do you know the shchita is from the neck? Maybe some other parts of the body. So the first answer that we gave was of Kana. You said the word v'shachat. V'shachat we read as if it's two words. That shach, the part that bends down, chatei, clean it out from its blood. And when I asked, maybe it's the tail. The tail's always hanging down. Shach means sometimes the neck, sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. And how maybe it's from the ear and onwards. Ask the Gemara. Maybe so. You said it has to be down where the nefesh goes out. Someone said no. Maybe you start from the ear and you work your way down to the neck. You start from the neck. So when it answers, you're right. Halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Halacha l'Moshe Sinai. And we'll learn this Girsa in Rashi. There's another Girsa in other Rishonim, but we'll learn Rashi. It has a different shot, but we'll learn Rashi. Says the Gemara further, and and what do we do with the pasuk v'shachat if we're learning halacha l'Moshe Sinai, just like all the other psulim that don't decapitate the animal completely? Don't go after while you're cooking some money, right away go through the back and break the back through. This is where we had a discussion about shooting an animal or stunning the animal right after shchita. Rav Yemar says, answer number 2. How do you know you shech from the neck? We're in the middle of the page. The last line is Rav Yemar Omar. I don't learn from the word v'shachet. I learn from the word v'zavachta. It says in another pasuk, it says v'zavachta that you should shech again, but we're using a different word here. V'zavachta. Memokim shezav, from the place where the blood pours out, is chateyu. Cut it or break it. Says the Gemara, my mashma the high chateyu lisha the mitvaru. I know the word chateyu means to break it. No, but we're breaking the word of v'zavachta to two parts. Zav, chatei. The part where the blood comes out, the neck. Chatei, break it. How do you know the word chatei means break it? The chsiv, because it says in pasuk, al tira. The Eibush says al tira v'al teichas. Don't fear and don't have trepidation and don't fear. So this is what Moshe Rabbeinu is repeating. The Eden shouldn't be scared when going to Israel. Al tira v'al teichas, and so we see the word teichas means break. Maybe how do you know it means from the neck? Maybe the nose. The nose also runs. Zav, we need Zav that only naturally doesn't run. You have to do an activity to make it run. But the nose runs constantly on its own. So maybe you have to stab the heart. How do you know it means the neck? Question number 1. Vesu, again, we're learning Rashi. That it's Vesu, not Rav Kana's answering back. Vesu, Shehiyah, Dorsa, Chalada, Hagrama, Vika, the 5 kinds of psulim. Shia, which is pausing. Dosa, which is pressing instead of cutting, you press. Or chalda, where you put the knife in between the simonim and then you cut. Hagrama, where you go above the area where you're supposed to cut or below the area. The ikura, you pull out the simon. How do you know they're all apostle? How do you know the apostle? There's no remes for it in the Torah. Ela gemara, it's halacha Moshe Messina. So shchiti b'letzavonami gemara. So too shechting from the neck. So the word was a vachta, which you said is made up of these two words. What else do we need the word was a vachta for? Especially why change from v'shachat to use the word was a vacha if we already have a word v'shachat? The shavi gets the same thing. Don't cut it all the way. Don't cut all the way through the back and everything else. And Taisus therefore doesn't like Rashi Pshat. You just said v'shachat is coming to teach you don't cut through the whole entire decapitate. So what do you need a pasuk for? So Rashi says each one argues from which pasuk we learn out, but because of that, Tosha doesn't like this whole pshat where Rashi learns. He has a different pshat thing at all. Completely. Does he more right? In other words, Tosha holds that even though halacha Moshe Sinai tells you the general rule where you have to shech from, but we don't know exactly which part. You know, the top of the neck, the bottom of the neck. So therefore, comes along. We need the pasuk as well to teach you where exactly to shech. So we need both halacha Moshe Sinai, and we need to say the general area, and then we have the pasuk to tell you exactly where. That's how Tosha learns pshat. Tell him right. A third pshat. The way Rabbi Shmuel Tana, you know how you know you shech the neck. Tana says v'shachat. I'll take it v'shachat. Not what we said before. You break it up into two words. Shach, bend where you bend down. Chatei, clean out, take out the blood. But rather from the word v'sachat, fetch it. A shin and a sin are interchangeable. Ella v'sachat. That what where you squeeze out. So he's saying over here. Sorry, over here v'sachat doesn't mean question. Sorry, it means talking. Here's sorry. So sach is here sich of talking. So ela v'sachat, where you talk. Where do you talk from? From your mouth. Is chatei, from where you talk. The mouth is the neck. You have to chatei, clean out all the blood. Cut the tongue. Why the neck? Cut where the tongue is. That's where you really talk. So beina damanefesh, like you cut the tongue out. You need to remember about kabbanas. You have to then take the blood and spray them as beach. And you need a dam shanefesh, and that won't happen. You have to cut through the neck. The aim of the cut of Azadam, sorry, maybe it cuts that.
Why do we have to have them from all cutting in all these different places where it's not going to?
We're trying to find a mocker.
Yeah.
Could we say it's possible if you don't do it there? Why is possible? Maybe that's ideal, but why make it possible anywhere else? So we need to find an element somewhere.
Even dam nefesh, that's such a logic that we didn't bring over.
Who said you need dam nefesh? It's only by kabbanas. Because we need the blood. After you shech, it says in the pasuk, you have to then take it. It's only because of kabbanas we need. Otherwise, you wouldn't even know. Says the Gemara. So maybe the tongue. The tongue doesn't not dam nefesh. Is the aim of maybe start from the tongue and work your way down to the neck. The aim of the cut of azul dam nefesh. So maybe we start from the tongue and cut vertically down, and then you get the dam nefesh because he says you said sach. Where do you talk from? You don't. Your vocal cord might be your neck, but where do you talk from? You talk from your mouth. Kash number one, and according to Rashi, kash number two is the su, and furthermore, shehiyah. It's a halach mashinai. No shchit b'tzavanami gemara. But the question goes back. We call them ayasa. What are you puzzled for? The l'shavik yisra. And Tais really has a hard time here. But the truth of the matter, even according to Taisus, the last two is sort of the same limud. But Rashi says they're all arguing on where do you learn out this concept? Don't decapitate. Don't go through the back as well. So anyway, right? We have another Tana who brings from a fourth place. The next, it says in the pasuk, the orchu b'nei Aaron hakoyim. Again, we're talking about kabbanas now. That the b'nei Aaron hakoyim should set up. What should they set up by the carbon oil? As hanasachim. Remember, they cut it up into parts and then tevorim, and they bring it up onto the mizbech. Then the pasuk says, as haroish, you have the head, and then mitzapod, and the something else. The head is sort of separate. You already said in the Sach and bring up all the parts. Why do you have to spell out the head? You already said all the parts should go up in the Mizbeach. So why do you have to isolate the head? Because it says in Pasik, what you do is, before you cut up the pieces, strip the oil, remove the hide. And then you cut in the pieces. So therefore, but where do you remove the hide from? From the body. You don't remove the hide from the head. So we would have thought that which part has the nesachim Only the parts of the body, not the head. Ain't the I would have thought the aricha only refers to the parts of the animal where you stripped the hide from. I know the head also goes on the mizbech. Also, part of the aricha on the mizbech has to be set up. The kvar hutas that was already decapitated. Therefore, it says in another pasuk, and we bring a different pasuk, which we're going to ask why bring a pasuk. A few pasukim later, where it says you cut it up into pieces, you separate the roish and the rest of the body, and you set them on the head. And says there, so roish shoyves pidroi, and then it says va'orach hakoyin, you should set them up. Now what? So therefore, we learn out from there that the head, even though it's not covered by the hide, also goes on the mizbeach. Now, it says it clearly that it's decapitated. How do you decapitate a head? Only if you shut through the neck. So that was already decapitated. That's how you know shchita is from the neck. So you learn out shchita from the neck, from kabbanas, by saying there that you put on the carbon oil. Okay, but why do we start with one pasuk? The first pasuk we brought is good enough. It says that the roish and the peder are separated, and then when you finally say, "How do you know that the head?" Why do we need a pasuk with the head? You bring the other pasuk, Messiah, it says its head and its peder. Why change the sukkim? We can learn the same limit from the first pasuk that you brought the chatzchila. Menayin lerabis as a roish kvar hutus. I know the head is completely decapitated. Tamaloimer as a roish was a peder. Is v'roisha yepidrei lamali. So then a few words are missing. The Rai is asking, so why taka do you need the other pasuk as roisha yepidrei? Like in Tanya, we needed menayin. How do you know l'roisha peder shekoy milachol zochim? How do you know the first part of one of the head and the fat and all that? How do you know that's the first part that goes in the bear? Tamaloimer as roisha ves pidrei v'orach. It's missing a few words. We're not learning from the second roisha pidrei that the head is decapitated, and even though the hide is not covering it, put in his bear. That we learned from the first one. We're learning from here is that this is the first parts that you put on the bech, because it says it's roish pidrei, and the next word is va'orach, as if the word va'orach is referring back to the roish. That's the first thing goes on. Yeah. So Gemara said upedekam. Okay, so you explain why roish. You explain why the first roish is written, that even though it's not covered by the hide, by the oil, still it goes on the bech. But why say pedre? Why would you think it's of course it's included? Upedekam because I'm lamali. But boy, you know what we need it for? Is likidatani. We learned another brayse. Kate said, so when you bring a carbon on mizbeach, how do you bring the head? When you bring the body, we want that the fats and everything else should cover over the base of shchita. It shouldn't look ugly. Lord, there's so much blood there. It's mis that on mizbeach, but the shulchan gavoya, we're giving the Eibush, it's also bloody. If you cover it with fats, it covers it over. So that's what you need the word peder for. Al base of shchita, malay. They're covered. They're covered. Okay, so that's ready for. But another Tana. Ma'aseh Mahil actually got from somewhere else altogether. Very interesting. We actually learned it from a bird, a behemoth from a bird. The Tanya we learned, this is the laws of behemoth and an oif. It says in Pashmin all the carbon, all the animals that are kosher, so on. These are the laws of behemoth or oif. And then the pasuk also says, and the things that live in the water, which will come back in a minute. Where do we find behemoth and oifa compared to each other? Where do you find dinim that behemoth and oifa are the same or oifa behemoth? First of all, behemoth metama b'maga masa. A behemoth just touching it or lifting it, you become tamei. And an oif, a kosher bird, you don't become tamei unless you eat it. Ain't a metama b'maga masa. So it does not become tummy by touching it. An avail is oif tight. Oif tameh, oif on the other hand, oif is metama begad rabbeisa bliya. It's metama two things. You swallow it and your clothes become tummy. But behemoth don't do either. He's made a Torah Shas Behemoth life. Where do you find the comparison between the two? Of Va'if Behemoth. Loim will tell you. Ma Behemoth b'shchita, af oif b'shchita. Just like so sorry. Right now, this Bryce has learned. We'll finish in a minute. We just like a behemoth requires shchita, so too a bird requires shchita, and you need a behemoth for shchita to make it no longer unavailable. To make kosher. If you live in behemoth, you need to have both samanim cut, at least the rave of both samanim. So by bird also you need both, and we said before in the Mishnah only one's enough. Said the pasuk no, not in every respect, only zeis. In one din they're similar. In which they're similar, they both need shchita. But they're not similar in exactly how many samanim you have to go through. So the Gemara, Rabbi Lezer says the other way around. Where do you cut a bird? Malika, from the neck. That's how you learn out the behemoths from the neck, because we're comparing it to a bird. to malik of a bird, which is through a neck.
Wouldn't you do it from the back?
Over there by a bird from the back that sees the head, back of the head. It says you should be like its head. Is by a bird chatas. It says they below yavdil, but it says only it. Here you do the back, and not the other thing, but you can learn from here, which is the behemoth. So therefore, Rabbi Lezer holds that you learn from a bird. So it's race. It's like Sonny Mar Meklemis. But Rabbi Lezer, how is my Lezer? What do you do? The limiting of Zeis is Elav Zeis having flat for Zeis. I would have thought Ma Oif Besimen Echad. Since you're learning the shita of a behemoth from a Oif, I would have thought over there one simon is good enough by a bird, maybe a behemoth as well. That's why it says God. Because Rahman is Zeis. So the Zeis is coming to limit the behemoth that's learning from a bird. Not the bird learning from behemoth like the Tanakama. Very interesting. Now, a bird is right between a behemoth and fish. To tell you that what? How many samanim you need? So to tell you a bird needs 2 samanim EF, she can be. Why not? She got hooks to dogim. It's the next thing is dogim, which has no shchit at all. The point of like on the other hand, say, well, okay, a bird doesn't need shchit at all. Can't be. She got hooks to behemoth, sandwich in between. So it's less than a behemoth, but more than a fish. Okay, so what you mash with one simon. Dogim the labne shchitin numenolon. How do you know you don't have to shech fish? If it's all the same pasuk, and we learn from like the Tanakhama, they learn from behemoth we need shchita. So why don't you say that fish also needs shchita? Elay Meshach says the pasuk Hatzayin Ubakar. It says the pasuk that the Tzayin Ubakar Yishachet Lahem, that the Tzayin Ubakar Yishach. And then it says in the pasuk, and Imes called the Yam Ye'osim Lahem. When it comes to it, just says gather them together as if you don't eat shchita. Basiv Amasaglo, just gather them together. We'll have it later on. It says Hasifosan Zu Shchitasan. But right now we're saying just gathering is elamatos. Every time it says gathering means you don't eat shchita. So that's a question by the Slav. The Eden said over there, we want a Slav, we want the quail. And what happens? What's the pasuk say? What actually happened? It says by Ye'osu a Slav. They gathered together the slav. Does that mean they don't have to shecht? They didn't have to shecht the birds. Well, I'm going to point you after you just said a minute ago that birds need shchita. Check out hookers behemoth because you compare the behemoth, and says the word asifa there. So does that asifa doesn't mean that you don't shecht. So you want to know, it depends on the context. Hasim over there, it says the Yosef, they gathered together. Here in the pasuk by fish, it says by Yosef in the same pasuk where it says shchita by Tzoyin Abakar, it says Yishachet. It says here by fish Yosef Lem. In other words, the technique he used for behemoth and Tzoyin, which is Yishachet, what's the technique by fish? Just take him out of the water. Asifa. The Achrin. Others, it contrasts shchita by an animal and gathering by fish. Sorry, that's not good enough. That's good. You don't have to shecht. Later on, we're going to learn. The Gemara has an expression. He'll die. He dies very quickly. And there's a whole question of halacha whether it's sab alachaim by fish or not. Big machlekes. Okay, Dadash.
The mayim is makar chaim of the fish. So yeah, taken from there is good.
Yeah, but a fish lasts for a minute or two. Should you club it straight away?
Around.
Dadash oive galila dashin is a person from Galil. Behema shenivra. Very interesting. Now, a behema that, and why he explains now why taka do you need shchit of 2 money by an animal and 1 by a bird? So you learn the pasuk. Now he gives us a logic behind it. It goes as follows: Behema shenivras min hayabosha. A behema which is created from earth. It has much more strength. Right, requires 2 semanim to kill it. But dogim shenivim they were created from the water itself. Is hechshedim b'leiklum, it dies straight away because water is so weak. Oif, a bird is created from a mixture of water shenikrim and from mud, which is a mixture of water and dirt. So it's not as strong as an animal; it dies quicker. So 1 siman is enough. Hashem is echad. 1 siman is enough. So Oivigla holds that birds came from mud. That birds have scales on the bottom of their legs, just like fish have, which means it's not like it has water in it. It comes from water as well, and that's why it's weaker. And as soon as you check through 1 siman, it dies already. And the whole purpose of shchita is to make sure it's not an avela, but it'll die because of the shchita, and you caused it to die. Furthermore, they ask, Machlek is showing whether it's asking Rabbi Gamliel or Rabbi Yechel Mazaki. They ask, because one part it says, Hashem said, Yishrutu Hamayim Sharet Nefesh, that the water should produce all the living things in the water, which is fish. And then it says sheretz nefesh chayev oif yoifif and so on and so forth. Sheretz nefesh chayev oif yoifif, and the chay and the bird of flying alma memayi. But it seems that everything came from water. But another pasuk says vayitzer Hashem lekim mino adama. He created from the earth the chayes and the bird. The birds they came from earth. Which one is it? Water or earth? Came from the water. Malay min nibru came a mixture of water and sand and dirt. So therefore, and sand. So therefore, it's a mixture. It's like mud, and that's why we said before that a bird is a mixture, and therefore it's weaker than an animal. One sim is enough, but it's not as weak as a fish. So that he saw that Tamidim were looking at each other like giving a wink. They don't like this pshat. You don't like my answer I gave you that I look what he called him. That I pushed away my enemies with such an answer. Such an answer to push you off. To store. Okay, you're right. I'll give you an answer. No, I'm going to disagree with Oyver or what I said before. Really, the birds come from water. So why does the pasuk say that he brought every one of them la'adam to see what the name he should give them? Name. So no, he says at the end of the day, called they actually came from water. So anyway, right? So no, it's not written here to tell you that it came from dirt and all that. It's written over here that when it says the pasuk about Yitzchak ben Hadama, it's not really referring to the birds. It's talking about the animals. So why is the birds mentioned at all? Because he brought them to Adam to get names, but not because he's telling you, he's describing their creation. They mamish came from water, but I guess it's still stronger, or he doesn't follow the pshat of Oyver. The Yeshem Lashon Achar Amar Lo Yisrei Hegmoin. Others say it's a different way of a conversation. The Lashon Achar is a Hegmoin. The Lashon Rishon Amar Tamidav. Faket that the first Lashon he said to Tamidim, which is what that's correct. It was a mixture of water and dirt, and therefore the Oyver Gula is correct. That's why you still need to check one simon. And the second Lashon he said, you know why they come from water. He was just pushing away the Hegman. Leave me alone. So says that you name Ben Pinchas ein shchita la'oif min. Nowhere does the Torah say you need to shecht a bird. In fact, the whole idea of shechting a bird is only midrabanan. Shenema, it says in Pasuk, it says there's a mitzvah called kisei adam, and it says over there, if you capture a bird or a chaya, it says v'shafach es damei, just pour out the blood and cover it with dirt. It sounds from here b'shvicha b'amasaga, anything which causes the bird to you break its neck, or anything that causes the bird, to have a lot of blood, issue a lot of blood. That's good enough. I don't have to necessarily shacht. It's only the Rabbanon that came along and said, you know what, birds have to be shachten. If so, the same pasuk says there, it says by chaya as well. So according to your logic, you don't have to shecht a chaya either. A deer, you don't have to shecht. A ram. It says iskish lepsuli hamikdoshin. We compare it to psuli hamikdoshin. It says later on in the Gemara that we say that if you have a carbon and it has a mum, you let it wander about till it has a mum, and then you sell it. And what do you do with it? And the money becomes kaidish. You buy carbonas. And what do you do with this original carbon that became a mum? You eat that carbon. And there the pasuk says you should eat it like a tzviva ayil. You should eat it like a tzviva ayil. Now what you can eat while your tummy and so on. So like a ram, you can eat the leftover carbon that has now a flaw. You swap it for money. The money becomes holy. This animal is not holy anymore. So you can eat it just like you eat your own deer, your own venison, and your own ram. So that's how you know you need shchita. It's like a deer. So Gemara says no. So if that's the case, we have a pasuk that says a bird is like an animal, which means you need shchita. The chesiv like hand top of the page. So that pasuk says that the laws of behem apply to a knife. You need shchita. So, and we had before Tanoim, if you remember, that says you need shchita. We learn, you learn a bird from an animal. Haksiv, it says in pasuk. Haksiv, pasuk with shafach as dombai. It says you should pour out the blood. So the pouring out the blood overrides the hekesh of comparing a bird to an animal. Talking about my chazid the shadya aliyah. So you decided that bird is shvicha, you don't need to shecht. Even though pasuk says elsewhere you do, but by chaya you leave it the original pasuk you do need to shecht. Maybe shadya chaya, maybe all the way around. Maybe the chaya you don't have to shecht. And there's a pasuk that says like a tzvika ayol, so overturn that because of shvicha and leave the bird with shchita ma'atayda. So you want to establish the Solomon. The last thing it says before it says about v'shafach. The last thing is bird. So the v'shafach goes on bird. Bird is not in shchita ma'atayda. Makes a question. So the sheichid v'shechted v'snabla b'yadei, and the bird became an avail in your hand. Hanoichid. Let's say you go ahead and you kill it, or ma'aker potter melachas. If you didn't do proper shchita, you did other methods. Yeah, exactly. So you don't have to do kisei adam. Since it's not kosher the bird, you don't have to do kisei adam. If you tell me you don't need shchita, I mean whatever you did is good enough. So why do you have to do kisei? So then the chita, that's a shchita. Is leboya kisei. If you tell me you have to shecht anything that kills that bird, you should have to go and cover the blood. So the Gemara says, "Me saved ba'oiv." Who said that this did over here sheikh is not talking about a bird? You're right. By bird, you still have to do kisei. Maybe it's talking about a chaya. Maybe it's talking about maybe a bird you have to cover. No. It's just one only by chayim by bird, not by behemoth. Loy b'chayim. It's talking about a chayim, but a bird, according to the Torah, you'll always need kisei adam if blood gushes out. Because according to the Torah, you don't have to shecht. It's only the Rabbanan that said you should shecht. We don't want to make a difference in a bird and an animal. If somebody shechts and he needs the blood, you have to cover the blood. Too bad. Even though you need the blood, too bad. Cover the blood. You can't use it. What do you do? If you want to avoid having to cover the blood, if you want to avoid having to cover the blood, and because you need the blood, what you do is don't shecht it. Just kill it, pull out the simonim, that's it. My lab, talking about a bird. Again, we see that what if Mata you don't have to shecht, then you would have to cover the blood. The kaboyle, and why would you need blood? Probably only a bird blood you need, and you need blood. You needed, for example, yenicha. You need to cover the worms that grow in woolen clothing, and therefore you somehow or another get rid of the blood. So that what else? Why else would you need blood? No, why need the blood? You need it. Let's say you need the dye, the color red for your hides or something. You need that color red for the hides. So therefore, we're talking about an animal. Okay, we'll stop over here. Continue tomorrow in Mitzvah Hashem. Have a good day.